Why don't I just start this discussion with the basics, the building blocks of this conversation, this subject matter, and of course is connected with my my new religion that I've announced, that I'm talking about and inviting people in real life, not by video, because it can't be done by video. See, I'm just letting you know the obvious, and so you know that I'm totally sane and reasonable. The video can only just talk about things almost theological, which is another way of saying the philosophy behind religion and the belief systems. Subject matter has to do with two components, but actually three, within the scope of my religion. And the two things you usually don't hear taken together, but I am intertwining them. I am putting them together, like peanut butter and jelly for the first time, or peanut butter and chocolate, whatever combinations. And the first one is FDR, but everybody knows this is a famous subject. This is a very historical, rich, well discussed and well documented subject or person. Everybody knows that, but I want you to have an open mind. And that's important for anything about the religion that I'm offering, but also just about this subject in particular, because it's so loaded. I really feel like people are going to take it as controversial. But having said that, maybe you do totally accept what I'm going to say to you, and if you accept it, then more power to you, because you might be one of my kind. Second part of the subject, which you compare with FDR, and by the way, FDR is President Roosevelt from during World War II time, not his uncle-in-law, well, actually his uncle, because they were related by like third or fourth or fifth cousins before he even intermarried into that side of the clan, the Roosevelt clan. So there's some history for you. But the second thing is reincarnation and past lives. So you're saying, whoa, these things are not taken together. I've never heard of them together before. Well, you might have heard them together if you watched a previous video of mine in the year 2009. It was first introduced as a concept, but it wasn't discussed very far. It wasn't analyzed, and I didn't. A lot of people didn't get to watch it. So, but if you look up these two things, you do a search on it, either on YouTube or Google or any other search engine, you should be able to come up with the videos, including this one. So by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you what it has to do with my religion. So first, let's talk about some salient points of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Everybody knows that he was a very complex man with a lot of influence on the world. He had a high position. Obviously, anyone who's been president of the United States ever since George Washington, there are probably up to 20 or more very well-known presidents that are always discussed or mentioned when you talk about politics. And FDR is definitely one of those. The weird thing about Roosevelt is that he's always confused with Teddy Roosevelt. Just a lot of people are not educated properly. They just don't have all the facts to keep their minds clear. I think this happens a lot with the American youth now because they're just not that interested in history. But I mean, if you're one of those historically minded people, like a history buff, or you just do well at the subject of history, you know that they're totally different. In fact, Teddy Roosevelt started out with the Republican Party. So that's strange. He then converted to creating his own party, which is called the Bullnose Party, and in which the elections he lost. It was after he skipped a term and then he tried to come back, if I remember correctly. So that was in the early part of the 20th century. Now, later on into the 20th century, as the Great Depression, as they call it, was setting in, is when FDR tried to become someone in the office, and he ran for vice president at first, and he lost, so he failed on that ticket. But he was a Democrat, and he went on again to be the Democratic nominee in 1932 and became inaugurated in 1933. I believe it was January, but at that year, for that term, they changed the inauguration date. It had originally been sometime in March, so they switched it to now what we know as the January 20th inauguration date. So he actually gained 2 months on his first term, and Hoover lost 2 months. Hoover, of course, was the prior lame duck president. He, at that time, was not very popular. He didn't seem to do anything, or was impossible to really solve this depression problem. Now, he was a Republican, so you see a lot of this change over. I know the bipartisan thing was going all the way back, definitely to then, and it's become solidified after FDR, where it's this bipartisan thing where they're really not very different. Back in FDR's time, it might be said that there was a fundamental difference, because he really fought the Republican forces of Wall Street and the banks and the corrupt rich class, the wealthy elite. Now, it can be said that, maybe this is just a glorification of FDR, and maybe he really didn't do much, kind of like what Obama would say in the dead letter, and if you read it, you say, oh, he's talking about all this stuff, and obviously he did a lot to put checks and balances upon the rich class, and he did so much for the poor. But today, you could definitely argue that Obama is not doing that. He's just saying that he is. So an analysis of FDR's history, you could actually possibly look for that kind of hypocrisy as we see in Obama. But I don't want to get too far into the FDR legacy, rewriting history, another perspective. I think that we'll eventually get to that, but I want to move on now to past lives and reincarnation. What it means is that all of us, or some of us as humans, have been here before, and that we will continue to return here, even after we die. In fact, death is just a new beginning because you prepare to have another lifetime from that point on. Now, in the scheme of all time in the universe, or if you just want to look at our globe of the earth, it's a very fascinating concept. If you stop to wonder, well, I might live 30 years, I might live 70 years, or you know, whatever you're going to come up with, which you don't know. You don't know until the day you die. And at that point, you're probably not even thinking too much. You're just consumed by the whole act of death. It's not even an act. It's something imposed on you that's suddenly taken over. You're just obsessed with that, focused on it. But if you think about your whole life that you're going to lead, and you think about it in the scheme of things, how does that compare with millions, billions of years of eternity? Because that's the first major question. How much time is there? And if it's infinite, then you better believe that the average lifespan is not enough within that, because it would be infinitesimally small. Even if history was could be 5 billion years or 10 billion, it's still just a fraction of a percent. So how can you only exist physically for that point in time and then become destroyed? Then what are you going to do? You think you're going to exist in some place and not become physical again? I mean, even the Bible has a lot of clues as to what it's saying, even if it doesn't say it outright. It implies it very much. There are many passages in the Bible. I'm not going to analyze Christianity for reincarnation, though. I'm not. I'm not going to analyze it for the Hindu belief system, or Vedic, from the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, the Gitas, which are songs or poems. I'm not going to put it into that. And I'm not going to put it into Judaism or Islam or anything. I'm just going to put it into spiritual truth of human existence. If you don't understand how possible it must be to have multiple lives, then you can't be watching this. I mean, shut it off now. Just probably shut it off. If you're that closed-minded, you shut it off in the first minute. But I told you, you need to be open-minded. If you haven't heard me talk about reincarnation before, then you're gonna get it through me. And it's a real teaching. It's a true teaching. I'm going to show you why this is what our Creator wants for us. We are able to learn through a succession of lifetimes. We're only able to learn about God's mystery, God's incredible, vast intelligence and entire creation, if we go through these stepping stones. Because you gradually want to increase your wisdom and your closeness and your appreciation for who created you. And you can't do that in one lifetime. Don't tell me you can, because I know you can't. I know that whatever you are aware of right now, some of it, even the most important parts of it, came from your previous lifetime or many lifetimes. Okay, you can't just learn all of this in one life. You can't. I'm telling you, there ain't no way. I can even admit that. Do you know how arrogant I am? How my vast IQ and everything, and that's, nobody can debate that. You know, even people I grew up with, my own parents are professionals. They're literal, reputable, mainstream, bona fide professionals. All say he's a lot smarter than us. What the hell is he doing with his life? Why doesn't he make $1 million salary? Well, look, what I do with my intelligence is I say to you, from my arrogance of knowing that I'm smart, being aware of that, I knock it down a few pegs and I tell you with humility, being humble, I say there's no possible way I could have learned all of this from being born when I was 40, 50, almost 60 years ago. There's no way. It comes from another source that I can't explain unless I take into consideration the mysterious possibility or truth, the mysterious truth, unbelievable truth, incredible, wonderful truth, the fact that I existed in another life prior to this one. So in conclusion, I'm going to tell you right now, and this is part of my religion, and anyone in the religion accepts it for what it's worth. But the main thing that's worth it is to know how you were, even if you could not know the name of who you were. There's something about it that you know.